and welcome to the Busy Mom Show, the show to help moms and their families thrive. I'm your host, Dr. Leonora Rhodes, and today we're going to be talking to elite athlete Karlton Meadows, and we're going to be talking about what it takes to become a peak performer and how that's relevant to being a parent and how it's relevant in the family. First, to tell you a tiny little bit about me, I'm Dr. Leonora Rhodes, and I'm author of Beyond Soccer Mom, Strategies for a Fabulous Balanced Life, and I'm also a health and happiness coach. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Karlton Meadows, and I'm going to read a very brief bio for Karlton because his actual bio is very, very long and very impressive. So Karlton is a health and fitness trainer, and he has worked with Olympic and world-class athletes and the elite military. And now, at the age of 45, he is a US track and field member, currently training to win the 800-meter gold in the 2016 Olympics, which is a big wow for me. So it's great to have you on the show, Karlton. Thanks so much for coming on.
Well, it's a privilege to be here. That's a great bio. I'm going to have to make a point to sit that guy down and have a discussion so I can improve my own performance.
Absolutely. So Karlton, tell us, you have an interesting story, and I know that you didn't start off life as an elite athlete. In fact, you were quite the opposite. So tell us about your story of being a young man and how you came to be doing all these amazing things now.
Well, I think growing up in the 70s, everybody was outside. Well, at least most of the kids in my neighborhood. So the things we see now have names like parkour. There was no name for it. You were a short kid. There was a 6-foot fence. You ran up to the fence, threw your waistline up against the bar, flipped over, hit the ground, and kept running. Yeah. And so, that was the environment in which I grew up. Roger Bannister had broken a 4-minute mile barrier, and I wanted to be an athlete. Yeah. And there was several Ironman triathletes that were on the scene back then, Dave Scott, Scott Tinley, and there were these rivalries going on all around me. I mean, decathletes like Bruce Jenner, Edwin Moses, Carl Lewis, the track and field scene was blazing. But apart from all that ambition, I was lacking one thing, and that was athleticism. I think I had some mild form of anemia or something because my sister has sickle cell and asthma. Yeah. But I continued to dream, and I tried out for Little League Baseball. That did not go well. I played Pop Warner football. That didn't go well. I sat on the bench. I didn't get into games, and I never gave up the hope of being an athlete. And so eventually I got into sports in high school, and wrestling allowed me to use what I had. I was a light fellow with a moderate amount of strength, and I was flexible. So I got into wrestling and saw some promise. And from there, I went into the military. I tried to compete in wrestling, and I realized there was a difference between freestyle and what we did in high school. Okay. And I lost matches by points, not because I got pinned. I just didn't understand how it worked. And it wasn't long after that the Navy looked at my PT scores and asked me to run on the run team in California. And that was the beginning of the end. It went from that to people wanting me to play sports like flag football because I could run. Yeah. Well, the challenge was with football, you have to run, catch, and then run again, or catch while you're running. And I did not do those things simultaneously. So that was short-lived. But I could hold to the fact that I was competing in this semi-annual pseudo-Olympic competition that I called the PT test. Mm-hmm. And as I got stationed around the world, I competed in events in different countries and would finish in the top 3 or the top 10. And I dreamed of competing while I was in the military, but my career path and military and Olympic competitions just didn't line up. Sure. So after I retired, it took a minute before I reclaimed that dream of being an athlete because I had to go through physical therapy. So I did that. And that was the beginning of a new chapter because I believed, despite the car accidents, that once I got out of the military, if I could go to a rolfer or a structural integrationist, that they would be able to put the body back in balance. And little did I know they had even made advancements in that field to where they weren't using just their hands, they were using stainless steel tools. So I got what was called the Graston technique, I think. And I got on a treadmill, started running, and I just felt trapped. And so I kept increasing the speed until I felt comfortable. And I started to feel comfortable around 5-minute mile pace. And then I dropped it down to 4:45. And there's a saying, it says, rest it, don't test it. So when you get out of physical therapy, we're not trying to determine how well the protocol was. We're trying to let the body recover.
Yeah.
So I got off the treadmill and let some time pass and continued to run on the weekends, and the times continued to improve. I learned a lot more about stretching, and a book signing, I think, was a turning point when I was asked to author a chapter in America's Top Trainers Answer Your Fitness and Nutrition Questions. Figured the next logical thing is to do a book signing.
Yeah.
And we have a couple of shoe stores in the area that carry the socks that sponsor me.
Oh,
so I
cool.
went there.
Yeah.
Did a book signing, saw a poster of a young lady who runs the 1,500 meters, Jessica Simpson, and that's my family's maiden name. And there was this epiphany, like, I should just go to the Olympics. I'm a Simpson.
Mm-hmm.
And the manager just kind of encouraged me to pursue that because I had a sponsor and the store was there to support me. And we continued to run and competed in the nationals a couple of times, and it's a sealed deal. We're going to do whatever it takes to get there now. And I'm looking at being a collegiate athlete for the first time in my life at 45. That's a part of the plan, so that I have a coach instead of trying to accomplish it by myself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I believe you're at the University of Tampa these days. Is that right?
Yes. And we're Spartans, 300.
So tell me, my son has a question for you. I have a 17-year-old son, and he is into insanity and those kind of workouts. And, I know, and anybody who's tried to train, and I can't even imagine what it's like training at the level you're training at. So the question from my son is, do you think physical or mental strength, which is more important?
I would say the mental strength, because, as I said, I'm a grad student. I'm looking at things, and the body does not deplete its fuel sources when we go out and exercise, although we feel tired. So it tells us the body is able if we'll push it. There was a gentleman who was competing in the snatch or the clean and jerk, and he failed at his attempt. So he went and sat down and he came back. And this time he not only failed, the bar fell on top of him and crumpled him to the ground. So they bring the stretcher in, they're taking him out. He comes to. He comes back to consciousness, jumps off of the stretcher, runs to the platform, grabs the weight and thrusts it over his head. And then he just froze. It was like he was in shock. But when he came to, he realized there was something he was supposed to be doing. And despite his physical condition, his mental will overrode what had previously happened to him. So I would say it's definitely better to have a mental advantage. Yes. Because very seldomly do we tap into the full potential of the human body. I mean, Bruce Lee was a good advocate for maximizing all that the human body could do. And we saw the things that he accomplished in his short lifetime. Yeah.
So do you have any advice for kids who are kind of training in sports at whatever level, how they kind of recover when they're going through a bad patch, when things are not going their way, they've had an injury, or they just, my 15-year-old's a soccer player, and, you sometimes see the team, if people are not scoring goals, you can see, their shoulders start to go down and you can see their confidence sap away. How do you recover mentally when you go through, a loss like that?
One of the things is to realize that it is a team sport made up of individuals. So when we know we've given our best and we work to encourage our team members, there's never time to pass the blame around and say, well, this one individual caused us to lose. It's how do we perform better as a team? And that positive cohesion and the desire to encourage our teammates to give their best. And then we do the same and realize that there are going to be days that we come up against competitors who will have a slight advantage over us. We're just going to have to give it our best, let the chips fall where they may, and then analyze how can we improve in our next event or our next competition or bout.
Yeah.
It's always temporary. Even the win is temporary.
Yeah,
You can't
absolutely.
stay on that high, and there's no sense staying on the low because you didn't win. It's a part of the law of averages.
Yes. So do you think you spend more time kind of focusing on the future than dwelling on kind of what's happened before?
Well, when you dwell on what happened before, you dwell on what went right.
Okay.
And how do you implement more of that in the next competition?
Yeah.
Looking toward the future, you're asking yourself, okay, can I prepare a little better? Can I get a little more rest? Am I hydrating properly? Am I eating properly? Am I training a little too close to the competition date? So we really want to take a serious look at recovery, because most coaches, they kind of give the kids a light practice day before the event. And so the kids can't get together themselves and say, we're going to go over to the pitch because we know we got to work on this. Well, no, the coach gave you a light practice so that the body can kind of calm down and prepare for the event on the next day.
Yeah, that's great advice. Thank you. So tell me, I know that you do a kind of training called body engineering.
Yes.
That's new to me. Tell me and the audience, what's body engineering?
Well, it's a science-based approach to fitness, and it's integrating components that look at movement, muscular balance, and inflexibility. Because for the most part, injuries come from either a muscular imbalance or inflexibility. And typically the inflexibility is because one set of muscles is stronger than the other. So the weaker muscles tend to be under more stress. They tend to be less flexible. A lot of my clients are 40 plus. And so I have to be intelligent in how I engage them. If they've been sedentary, I want to take a look at what movements can they do currently and help them master those movements. And then we can increase the intensity or the resistance that they're using. And we also want to look at the speed at which they move, because if they've been sedentary, ballistic movements put a lot more stress on the joints. And so a program is never successful if the person is injured and can't participate in it. Yeah. And we look at the person as a whole, but also as an individual. We can't just say the latest trend is XYZ program or celebrity, and we're just going to drop you into it. Mm-hmm. We look at how they move, how fast they move, and how much weight or resistance to put on them while they're moving.
Sounds good. Yes, I suffer with a lot of injuries. I have very lax joints and I tend to get injured very easily. So that approach really sounds like a very sensible one to me. And, there's so many people kind of have long gaps between exercising and then, rush back into it and then end up with an injury. And then, they may as well not have bothered starting because they end up kind of with an even bigger setback. So it sounds like a very sensible approach. So tell me a little bit about the whole Olympic process and getting endorsements, and how does that all work?
Well, we're looking at approaching some big companies. I'm ambitious. Hence the little kid who wanted to be a athlete who could barely run. Yeah. But as of yet, we haven't got a official endorsement from any companies. What we've done, what I try to do is keep the endorsements that I've gotten as an individual. I got one from the Department of the Navy for Male Athlete of the Year. And I got one from the United States Special Operations Command as a candidate for Personal Trainer of the Year award. So those kind of help. And I've got invited to go on different groups to Russia, India, and China, as a fitness professional. So I have to know a little bit of something. So I feel that those are important when approaching future sponsors as well as future clients, so that they know this is something that I'm serious about, and this is something that I'm excelling and continuing to learn about.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. So, as you know, I work mainly with mothers, and the big frustration for a lot of women who are balancing family, sometimes career, and their own life is, it can be frustrating trying to get fit. It's hard work, and sometimes you set yourself some fitness goals like losing weight or exercising 5 times a week, whatever it is. And life gets in the way and it's hard. How do you think busy mums can kind of move beyond that frustration with their fitness goals and become more successful?
I would say let their clothes be their guide instead of the scale, because if you look at a piece of clothing that you can't fit and you say to yourself, well, I can't fit that, and you engage in a program and on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, you try to fit into the clothes, it doesn't matter what the scale says, the clothes are fitting more loosely. Mm-hmm. As far as getting into a program, I wouldn't advocate 5 days a week off the start, because moms have enough stress being moms. They're positive stressors, but if you take multiple stresses and dump on top of that, you're going to increase the body's likelihood of releasing a hormone called cortisol, which stimulates fat storage. And that's the very thing they're trying to avoid. So if they take a resistance program that they can do twice a week in the beginning, and then 3 times a week after, say, 3 weeks, the body should be acclimated or accustomed to the activity. And if they can do the full body in a 30-minute session and then spend 15 minutes doing some cardio, because if the pace of their exercise has little rest, the body will use the carbs that are stored for that. So when they go to the 15 or 20-minute cardio bout, the body taps into the fat stores to perform that. So they're going to see a decrease in body fat, which is really what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's what takes up the most space, the fat on the body.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned about exercise being a stressor. I hadn't really thought about that. I teach a lot of stress management workshops, and I explain to people, as you mentioned, the effects of stress is that your body kind of goes into this survival mode where it says, there's danger, I need to store fat and I need to, eat more carbs. And it hadn't really occurred to me that exercise would do that as well.
Well, it's a positive stressor, but the stress I'm talking about is them thinking about, well, I skipped a workout, or I ate this, or I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done that, because the ideal that they're working out may be quite positive, but finding a way to fit it in, especially when they're trying to do twice a day and 6 days a week. And if it's manageable, that will decrease the negative type of stressors that come from having an overloaded schedule.
Yes.
The exercise actually helps the body to mitigate stress because of the natural hormones that we release, like dopamine and adrenaline and epinephrine. So that's a good activity to engage in when feeling stressed.
Yes.
Or overwhelmed.
Yeah. So you mentioned in your bio a phrase which is cheating and treating. What does that mean? I'm intrigued by that.
Well, that goes hand in hand with stress. Okay. No one likes a cheater. Mm-hmm. No one likes being cheated. Most people like being treated, and most people like treats. Yeah. So psychologically, we begin to condemn ourselves when we say, I cheated. This is my cheat meal. I mean, it sounds great when you say, I get to eat this because this is my cheat meal. If we say, this is my treat, you're rewarding yourself for something positive. Yeah. And the treat itself is something positive. It's something that you want. So you have the happy drugs in the head, the dopamine, because it's the body's getting something it wants. That can decrease the amount of fat stored because we're not feeling like cheaters. So if we treat ourselves, that's fine. We can do the same thing if it's a ice cream sundae or a brownie a la mode or whatever it is, or a bag of chips. I don't know, different treats appeal to different people. But if they know it's something that they're allowed to do, the body doesn't go into that hormonal imbalance where we have cortisol down regulated. And then the body's going to consume muscle tissue, which helps keep the metabolism up. That's going to begin to drop. And then you have the fat storage, which also lowers the metabolism and makes it more difficult to manage or lose weight.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that. The kind of phrases we use. I do know that, the power of our thoughts is incredible, and I also, teach a lot of that. And by changing something from a negative to a happy thought, it changes all of the chemicals in your body. It changes the way your brain waves work. It changes the way your heart rhythm works. It really is extraordinary. And you're right. A lot of people kind of berate themselves if they eat unhealthy food, once a week, or they go to a party. And a lot of my clients, come to me and say, they come and say, I'm really sorry, but I cheated. And you're right, that's a very negative thing. And they can be sabotaging themselves by thinking in that way. So it's time to change the mindset on that. Are you still there, Karlton?
We don't make it a 7-day-a-week habit, but by setting the parameters and saying, okay, this is where I'm just going to take a little breather, and I'm going to enjoy living as a human being and treat myself.
Yeah, I like that. Sounds good. So tell us about the life of a collegiate athlete at the age of 45. I mean, I guess most collegiate athletes are in their 20s. How is it being, it's you're considerably older than all of the other athletes at University of Tampa, I imagine.
Correct.
Do they look up to you? How is that relationship with the other athletes?
Well, the funny thing is, some of them don't believe I'm 45.
You certainly don't look it.
So that kind of helps. And being able to compete, athletes have a camaraderie. There's a competitive respect for your fellow athletes. That some people are stronger or faster than you are, and you accept that.
Yeah.
You want to find out, okay, what can I learn from you to make myself a little bit faster? I think the challenge has been mainly with the coach, because the kids are kids. They're still ambitious. They're looking at what life and the future holds for them, whereas the coaches they're more rigid and like, look, I've been doing this for X number of years and I've never had anybody at this age be successful and blah, blah, blah. And I'm thinking, okay, I may have to limit my time around you and just follow your instructions and go do what I need to do to be successful. And maybe after the coach sees some of the performance, he'll change his attitude, but I have no guarantee of that. But I think that the biggest reception is from the college athletes themselves. They're amazed at, wow, you're still competitive. Yeah. So there's hope for them.
Yeah.
And just accept grandpa beating you. It's okay.
Yes. Yeah, and it must, I think your story is an extremely inspirational one, because I think, I meet so many people as they, hit 40, they start kind of complaining, I'm getting old now. And, you're a fine example of how, age really doesn't need to limit you if you have the right attitude and if you're willing to take, massive positive action. Age is just an excuse often for people kind of eating badly and not exercising. And, it's a good example of how our destiny is in our own hands often. My husband did a race, just a 5K a few weeks ago, and the whole thing was won by a 51-year-old. And, all the little kids were, the teenagers were like, we were beaten by a 51-year-old. They were really kind of put out by that. But also you could tell inspired by it too. So I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Any last kind of words of wisdom, maybe 3 things that people can do to kind of start taking responsibility for their own health and getting fit and healthy?
I would say get as much sleep as you can. as close to 7 to 9 hours per night. Definitely drink plenty of water. Coffee and tea is not the same. They're both diuretic, so they're going to achieve the opposite of hydrating you. And take a reasonable approach to fitness. If you're going to do something, let the body adjust to that change in your lifestyle. And, you know, we opened with insanity. I think if we do the same things over and over and expect different results, we call that insanity. But we don't see that as a positive thing. So when a program says insanity, I don't think it's intended for the average sedentary person. So take something that's a little lesser in intensity and master the basic movements first, and then you can become a little more complicated as you go forward, or you can combine movements together as you master the basic movements first.
Great. Well, thank you for that advice. Now, I would love you to share with our viewers and listeners how we can find out more about you and how they can kind of follow your progress with your Olympic dream. How do we get in touch with you?
Well, I'm on Facebook. I just launched the Team Gold Meadows Facebook page, and that's Meadows as in fields and brooks, so MEADOWS. And everything will span out from there. As far as training goes, there's the Majestic Balance Facebook page as well. And then I have a personal Facebook page, Karlton with a K, Meadows, and that's on Facebook.
Great, good. So I'll share those links at the bottom as well. So thank you so much, Karlton Meadows, for being on the show today. You are truly an inspiration to us all. And just to finish up by saying thank you to the viewers for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the show. If you'd like to watch more Busy Mum shows, head on over to thebusymumshow.com. Bye for now.